KC-12, clear takeoff, left hand. Takeoff left, this is speed 1. Left land, swim west, copy. Speed 1. Crossing 21. Crossing at 24 is runway.
Hello and welcome to the Blue Skies podcast. I'm PR Ganapathy, your host.
Just 70, roger, report type southeast, Greenwich, speed 4, runway 28, and view selected.
It is my great pleasure today to host Group Captain Subhash Chandar. Group Captain Chandar was commissioned into the transport stream of the Indian Air Force in January of 1972. And after a few years, he volunteered to transfer to the helicopter stream. And in 1991, he was commanding 152 helicopter unit, Mi-17 unit in Sarsawa, where he was called upon to perform an extremely dangerous and daring rescue mission that we're going to be speaking about today. But Group Captain Chandar had almost 7,000 hours of military aviation, after which he left the Air Force to fly helicopters in the civilian side, where he flew another 15,000 hours. So he is probably the most experienced aviator I have the pleasure of speaking to. So we're going to have a fantastic conversation with him today. But first things first, welcome to the program, sir. Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ganapati.
Very nice to have you on the program, sir. And as we do with all our guests, I'd just love to hear where you grew up. What was your motivation to join the Air Force, and what was that initial journey like?
Ganapati, I spent my childhood in a small place in district Hoshiarpur, Punjab. We were two brothers, and my father had served in the British Army during Second World War.
Wow.
And when we were children, we used to see his uniform and his medal and his belt and things like that. And there was some desire that when you think about a profession that I will also join defense forces.
Mm-hmm.
But at that particular time, I had no knowledge about Air Force per se. So we knew कि हमें army में जाना है or somewhere like that,
Right.
So, and my initial schooling was there only close to my hometown. And after 10th class, I scored some very good marks. And I think somewhere top in the university, I was in the 10th class.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of colleges invited me to join. In those days, colleges used to get the marks and they used to invite the good students.
Aha. Okay.
So I decided to join a college in Ambala.
Aha.
So I did my 2-year study there. I passed my pre-engineering and I was studying there in the college.
Mm-hmm.
When in Ambala, there is a Air Force station.
Yes, yes.
So we used to see those officers and all that. And from there only, I happened to join Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't spend much time. And within about 6-8 months or so, I landed up in Bidar for my flying training on
Right.
ST2.
HT2.
I think
wow.
that was that was in August 1970.
Aha. Wow.
So we did our initial training for 1.5 years. Then of course December 71 the war broke out.
Yeah.
And immediately after the war we were commissioned in January 72.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And after commissioning, I was posted to Jorhat, in the Eastern Air Command, that is
Yes.
Assam.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And in those days, on the Chinese border, there weren't many roads.
Hmm.
because the policy was different,
Right.
and all the posts which were along the border, they were to be air maintained.
Hmm.
So there were two squadron, and our job was to carry out airdropping for
Hmm.
the army.
Wow. Uh-huh.
And in addition to that, if you remember, in early 70s and late 60s, there was a Naga insurgency and also Mizoram insurgency.
Yes, yes. Hmm.
So our army had a lot of posts in Nagaland, small villages
Hmm.
to keep control of things.
Right.
So we used to carry out airdropping for the army, which was deployed to counter insurgency.
Hmm. This was in the Dakotas. Huh?
Dakotas,
Hmm.
Dakotas.
Now, flying in the Northeast, sir, we hear of these that navigation is really difficult. Each valley looks like each other, but if you enter the wrong valley, it's really dangerous. What was that experience like flying in that area, especially as a young pilot?
Yes, it is. It was difficult. Unfortunately, in those days, Dakota was the Second World War aircraft,
Hmm.
and it didn't have many aids,
Hmm.
navigational aids.
Right.
We had only one that NDB or a non-directional beacon, which we had.
Hmm.
Used to call it radio compass.
Right.
And when you are flying along the border, there is no station
Right.
to tune on,
Hmm.
So it was all visual flying.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
the difficulty used to be sometime the weather used to pack up, like you enter a valley
Hmm.
for dropping,
Hmm.
and particularly during monsoon time, by the time you are coming out, the valley might have closed,
My God. Uh-huh.
or the clouds might have come down.
Hmm.
So that used to be a very big challenge.
Hmm.
And that is where, a senior used to teach us that when you are entering a valley, you should always think about the weather, how will be the weather when you are coming out.
Hmm.
And both those hills are very high,
Right.
and we had lost couple of aircraft also because of the weather.
Hmm.
So it was challenging, there's no doubt about it.
Right. Right. And then after that, there was a shortage of helicopter pilots, and I believe they asked for volunteers, and you asked to be. What was
Yeah.
what was your thinking
uh,
at that time?
Uh, in fact, after 72, our helicopters team expanded.
Hmm.
We bought a lot of Mi-8s from Russia.
Hmm.
And there was a requirement of large number of helicopter pilots.
Right.
And we had surplus pilots in the transport.
Hmm.
So Air Headquarters came out with the policy that all those pilots who were less than 5 years service,
Hmm.
they should be converted to helicopters.
Oh, okay.
So, as a matter of fact, it was not a choice. It was just
Hmm.
that they posted
Right.
us to the helicopter training school,
Okay.
and most of us, maybe barring one or two who managed to come back, we
Hmm.
changed over to the helicopters.
Uh-huh.
And after I converted, I was posted to a place called Chabua, again in
Hmm.
the Eastern Air Command,
Right. Right. Hmm.
and I started flying a Mi-4 helicopter.
Okay. And your training was on which helicopter? So the same helicopter?
Chetak, Chetak.
Oh, Chetak. Okay. Uh-huh.
Training was in Sikandarabad
Hmm.
on a Chetak helicopter.
Okay. Wow.
And when I went back to East flying the Mi-4,
Hmm.
I realized that I'm doing more or less the same job which I was doing in Dakotas. The only difference was that in Dakotas, we used to airdrop things.
Hmm.
But here we were landing on the same places where we used to airdrop.
Wow. In that DZ, is
Okay.
it?
Yeah. So desert helipads,
Hmm.
and it was nice meeting those people,
Hmm.
physically, like particularly the army jawans who
Hmm.
are who are doing the duty far away
Correct.
from from their families.
Mm-hmm.
And that area used to be so tough that
Mm.
they had to walk 8 to 10 days to reach their post.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So the only mode of communication for them used to be either by walk
Mm.
or by helicopter. So when you
Wow.
are taking items for them, or when you are evacuating them,
Mm.
or when you are helping them in any way, it was a great satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. And they must have been really looking forward to your visits because you probably brought them mail and, of course, food and
Yeah,
all of that. Yeah. Mm.
exactly. Particularly the mail, and in those days there were no other means of communication.
Yes.
So we used to bring mail, and then sometimes the people who used to fall sick,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we had to evacuate them.
Mm.
Then the visit of the army senior officers to those posts.
Mm-hmm. Tell us some experiences from that times of these sorties.
Uh, you know, uh, in addition to the army's this particular role, we had one more role in Nagaland.
Uh-huh.
One helicopter of our unit was attached to 8 Mountain Dev in Nagaland.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nagaland used to be infested with the insurgency in those days.
Right. Uh-huh.
So, one helicopter was positioned near the Div headquarters
Mm.
exclusively for the
GOC.
Div,
Mm.
GOC Div.
Mm-hmm.
And there used to be a lot of these movement of these insurgents, who used to be active in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to drop troops to intercept them.
Wow. Oh.
And I remember one incident that we were in. There's a place called Chakabama in Nagaland.
Uh-huh.
Helicopter used to be positioned there. It was close to the Div headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
So at night around 2 o'clock, we got a message that intelligence report has come that a group of about 15 insurgents, they are returning from China.
Mm. Wow.
You see, China used to train them. They used to come to Burma. From
Uh-huh.
Burma, they used to enter at that time East Pakistan.
Ah.
And then they used to enter the country.
Okay. Uh-huh. Okay.
Okay.
Mm.
So we got the message that there are about 15 of them. They are likely to enter India.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a requirement to drop the troops. So we got in East, the sun rises early.
Yes, of course.
So I remember we got up around 3:30, got the helicopter ready, and by about as the light was just coming around 4:15, we started dropping the troops.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we dropped about. We made 3 trips and we dropped about 25 of our Jawans in that area where we expected that those people are likely to enter.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, we came back. And after about 3 hours or 4 hours, we got a immediate message, that you go back quickly. There is a firing and some of our troops are injured.
Wow.
So again, we went, and sure enough, there was an encounter, and we lost 2 Jawans in that encounter. 3-4 of them got injured, but there were 5 of them, 5 Nagas or insurgents who got killed, and a couple of them, not couple, at least 5-6 of them got captured also.
Wow.
Okay. So
Amazing.
that was one incident, where we saw that, you are carrying a Jawan in the morning, hale and hearty, and after 4 hours, you are bringing back, his body.
Wow.
And those Jawans we brought who were injured, of course, they were taken to the hospitals and all that. So these kind of things, they always stay with you subsequently also.
And how about the VIP duties, carrying the VIPs, and how was that
Yeah.
experience?
That was another, particularly in those days, a VIP used to be either the governor or the chief minister or the army commanders. Okay, they were the VIPs. who used to fly in that area in helicopters, and they were to be taken in small places.
Mm.
And during VIP, the most important thing used to be the weather.
Mm.
Okay, because what happens is, imagine that there is a program of a chief minister, people are waiting there in a small village where everything is done,
Mm.
and the weather is marginal.
Aha.
Okay,
Right.
so you don't know whether to go or not to go.
Mm.
Okay,
Wow.
so that is where your experience, your little bit of maturity comes into way
Mm.
to tactfully either say no to the chief minister, because safety is important,
Right.
we cannot go, or if it is possible to take him there, you cannot be uh, uh, foolhardy, okay, no problem, I will take. You cannot be like that. You have to
Correct.
be very mature at that time to handle that situation.
Right, right. So let me ask you, you were a fairly junior officer at that time, and these are major generals, and of course, the chief ministers and governors are very senior people. There must have been tremendous pressure on you to, do whatever they were asking you to do. And what was the kind of feeling, decision making support that you got from the Air Force side?
The Air Force used to support us, but sometimes the army never understood.
Right.
Okay,
Uh,
like I remember one particular incident. We had like there was an order that when you are entering certain valleys where it becomes very turbulent in the afternoon,
mhm,
the order was that we had to leave the valley by
mm,
12:30 hours. Means
mm,
12:30 you should be out of the valley.
mhm.
Okay, that was the Air Force order.
Right.
So once we took one major general, he was div commander,
Mm,
and we dropped him at a place, and we kept waiting. He went for inspection, and
mm,
he didn't come in time.
mhm,
Now, now what happened was that 12:30 is approaching, and
mm.
we had to be out of the valley.
My God.
So we took off and we came out
Mm.
without. We left him behind.
Oh my.
Oh my, it was such a. After that, they rang up everywhere. Of course, Air Force supported us,
Ah,
but Army always felt these helicopter pilots, they
mm.
they are not disciplined and things like that.
Right. No, it's quite
Uh,
a difficult thing for them to
it
understand,
was
I'm sure.
difficult. It was difficult, but there were some people they understood. There were
Mm,
some people they were very nice. They understood. Like
right.
when we said, no, sir, we should not go. Weather is marginal. They understood and
Mm,
they said, okay, fine. I mean, we were very junior. Used to be very nice with us,
mhm.
and they used to agree. Okay, forget
Right.
it. If it is marginal, we will not go. Then they
Okay.
used to take it.
Right.
Rather, we taking a decision. They used to take a decision. Okay, we will not go.
Visual, before just need 70, like your report time southeast, Greenwich, for the midway, and you'll select it.
Right. So after that, then you moved to Chetaks and flew in
Yeah, yeah.
the J&K area, I was told, right?
Yeah, in 78, so end of 78, I
Mm.
was posted from Eastern Command to the northern side. I
Hmm.
came to J&K area.
Okay. Uh-huh.
There was a 114 helicopter unit,
Mm.
and our role used to be flying in Leh area that time.
Okay. Uh-huh.
We used to fly in Srinagar also, but
Mm.
I was a bachelor. Bachelor means my family was not with me at that time.
Uh-huh. Right.
So I was at that time. By that time, I had become a little senior flight lieutenant.
Uh-huh.
So I was generally sent to Leh, where I spent a lot of time.
Wow. Mm.
And Leh flying was another challenging because of the high altitude.
Right. Mm.
Okay, okay. And you know that as we go up, the efficiency of the engine as well as the rotor keeps on reducing.
Hmm. Yeah.
And Chetak is a good helicopter, but up to about 10,000 feet.
Hmm.
Above that, because of the low density, its
Mm.
performance reduces drastically.
Right. Right. Hmm.
And the Leh airfield used to be around 10,700, about 11,000 feet
Yeah.
itself.
Hmm.
So again, as you know, army was deployed along the border,
Mm.
and we had to support them.
Right. Mm.
And from Leh, we used to go to those places. If you have heard, that is DBO, called Daulat Beg Oldie,
Yes,
Track
yes.
Junction,
Mm-hmm.
Chumtash,
Mm.
okay,
Oh,
and Hot Spring. And this, but you these days in the news that
they're all heating up again. Yeah.
Pagongsong Lake, famous
Right.
Pagongsong Lake.
Yeah.
Okay, so all these areas we used to go every day.
Mm.
And there were two passes, when we had to cross to go to these places.
Mm.
One was Changla Pass and one was Khardungla Pass.
Mm.
And these passes used to be above 18,000 feet.
Oh boy. Wow.
Okay. So when we used to take off from Leh with the load and as well as fuel, because we have just started the flight,
Right. Mm.
and it used to be a challenge crossing these passes with
Wow.
full power. And so many times we have to orbit short of the pass to burn some fuel or wait for some updraft
Oh my goodness. Wow.
to cross these passes.
Hmm. And the Chetak was unpressurized, so you were breathing oxygen,
Yeah.
is it? So,
Unpressurized, we
mm.
used to just take oxygen directly with the help of a tube.
Hmm. Wow.
Okay. From the cylinder, the tube used to be there.
Okay.
Okay. And I remember one incident, flight lieutenant at that time, flight lieutenant BD Singh was another pilot with me.
Mm.
We were trying to cross Khurdungla Pass and not Changla Pass,
Mm.
and we were we realized that we cannot cross it, so we were orbiting, trying to burn fuel and gain some height.
Hmm.
And when we gained height, we gained about 300-400 feet above the pass level. We could see
Right.
the passes below us. And as we were trying to cross, there was a severe downdraft.
Oh
And
my.
with full power, our helicopter kept sinking, and it almost touched the soft snow. It had snowed.
Holy
Okay.
cow.
So it almost touched the snow. And with the maybe little ground cushion we got, and it went up again, and we went to the other side of the pass.
Oh my goodness.
So these kind of incidents, they always remain with you.
Hmm. And so, how often were you flying? How many sorties were you doing a day?
Every day we have to fly every
Mm.
day. Only thing was that area used to be different.
Hmm.
Okay, sometimes you go to the northern area from Leh, sometimes you
Mm.
go to the eastern sector, sometimes you go
Mm.
to the southern sectors.
Right.
So because carrying the same thing, carrying rations,
Hmm.
carrying mail,
Mm.
carrying VIPs,
Hmm.
wherever there was a requirement of the army,
Mm.
we used to go there.
Wow. Okay. And that time the Cheetah helicopter hadn't been pressed into service, so you were
No,
all flying
Air Force
Chetaks.
did not. We did not have Cheetah.
Mm.
Army had Cheetah,
Okay.
and
Uh-huh.
after I left, immediately after that, there was one or two more such incidents. Chetak's performance was always questioned.
Hmm.
So then that particular unit was also equipped with Cheetah.
Aha. Okay.
Cheetah was a better helicopter.
Aha. Right. Right. Okay.
And at that time, fortunately, the Siachen had not been active. Siachen was
Mm.
not activated as yet.
Right. Right.
And but army was always thinking of moving in there.
Mm.
And one of our job used to be to fly army people onto the Siachen, just to see the topography
Oh wow.
and see what can be done
Hmm.
there. Okay.
Wow.
So we used to take the people there, but it was totally, I would say, virgin Siachen,
Mm.
and nobody had really seen that
My God.
area
Uh-huh.
before that.
Ah.
So it was quite an experience. It was quite an
Right. Right.
experience, flying there over such a vast, such a big, uh, this thing, area which is covered with that kind of
Mhm.
snow.
So tell me about your first experience seeing the glacier and flying over it. What was that feeling like? And what route did you follow? Did you leave from Leh and then you went from Leh?
From
Mm.
Leh, we used to go, and there used to be that river, uh, where that apna
Shok.
Shok River,
Ah.
and then you have that Partapur or Thois airfield there.
Right.
Now those things have become roads are there, but that time there was nothing. Even that Thois airfield did not have a concrete runway. It was just a clear area, kacha area, where sometimes apna packets used to land. Okay. So when initially you fly over that area, na, to be very frank, it is scary because it's a single engine helicopter.
Yeah.
So you start thinking that should there be an emergency, where will I land?
Yeah.
Okay,
My
because
God.
in a single engine, if there's an emergency, you have to just go down.
Yeah.
And if
Wow.
there is a ground below you, you can fight it out. You can carry out auto rotative landing or something like that. But when you are flying over that kind of snow, and that snow is also not a flat snow. Okay.
Right. Wow.
So that is why it was very scary. But subsequently, you get used to it.
Oh. And you did a lot of videographing at that time of the.
Yeah. We used to, of course, army wanted to, make the maps and things like that. So we used to take handheld cameras, some people, and take the photographs.
Wow.
I mean, video was not there, this thing,
Right.
but the cameras, handheld camera used to be there. People used to take
Ah.
photographs to see,
To
okay,
see.
what can be done, how can we move, and things like that.
Tremendous. So then after that you became a QFI, I believe, sir.
Yeah, from there I was posted to FIS to do my course.
Must have been a
Then
big
of course,
change from Leh to Madras.
yeah. So after my training, I was posted to Bidar for the initial training of these cadets. I spent 1 year there. Then I came to helicopter training school in Sikandrabad. There again, I spent about maybe 8 months or 10 months. I did my A2 there.
Okay.
And then I was posted to FIS as an instructor.
As an instructor. Okay.
And FIS, I was for a longer time. I was there for about 3.5 years.
Did
Then
FIS have helicopters in the fleet at that time?
No.
Only HT2.
I use only HT2 and Kiran.
Kiran, okay.
Kiran was there.
Right. Okay.
So after that, I went to staff course, staff college.
Wow. Okay.
And from there, I came to AEB, Air Crew Examining Board, Hindi.
Right. Tell us about that. So what is AEB and what is being there involved? What do you do?
The role of the AAB used to be to standardize, all the air crew of the Indian Air Force. Now, there are different streams in Air Force, different aircraft. Each one has got a different procedure to fly. And in AAB, again, there are 4 flights. One flight looks after transport, one flight looks after fighter, another flight takes care of the training command, EQFIs, and then helicopters.
Right.
So the job of these examiners, you go and you fly, you go to all the flying units of Indian Air Force, all.
Right.
And you fly with those pilots. And one role is to standardize the procedures. That means if a Chetak is flying in the east or a Chetak is flying in northern side, the pilot should follow the same procedures. That is one role. And the second role is to categorize the pilot. That means depending upon his knowledge, aviation knowledge, depending upon his flying capability, you categorize him, how good he is. And as he gains experience, his category keeps improving. And the advantage of that is, that pilot has got professional, satisfaction that he is doing well.
Yeah.
That means his his proficiency is being acknowledged
Mm-hmm.
and recorded. And the other advantage is that the people sitting in air headquarters,
Mm.
they know that each pilot is of what category or what capability and how best he can be used for his
Mm-hmm.
posting, for his appointments.
Okay, okay. Uh-huh. And so a visit of AEB, so if I'm just say I'm in Hashimara, AEB would come visit the base once a year, twice a year?
Twice a year.
Twice a year, okay. And is that like a nervous time for people on the base because they're going to be, like I remember as a pilot myself, I have to do my check rides every so many years. I have to do my instrument proficiency check. It's always a nervous time here.
Yes, yes, you are right. It is like that. But then uh, it also has an advantage that the pilot is getting an opportunity to prove
Upgrade.
himself that he is
Aha.
a better pilot
Right.
and
Mm.
he deserves to be
Mm.
of a higher category.
Aha. Okay. Gotcha. Wonderful. So you must be on the road all the time then when you were in AEB, isn't
Yes,
it?
and
Mm.
with me, the thing, I mean, that is particularly for me was I have to go to the helicopter units
Mm.
as well as because I was qualified on HT2 and Kiran.
Mm.
So I was also co-opted or I was taken to the training command also.
Okay. Got it.
So I used to be a little more busy than the other helicopter
Mm.
pilots in
Right.
AEB.
So after that, you came to 152 HU, and that's when you converted onto the Me 17, is it?
Yeah, actually, I had converted to Me 17 earlier when
Uh-huh.
I was in AB only. At that time, I converted,
Hmm.
and then I came to 152 and took over the unit.
Hmm. So just
And
if we can pause here and just ask you about the Me 8/Me 17, what was the aircraft like? What were the differences between the two? And what was your experience flying them? What did you feel like compared to say the Me 4 that you had flown and then the Chetak that you had flown?
you see, like you can, Chetak was an aircraft of 60s,
Hmm.
and Me 8 was basically a military helicopter. It
Mm.
came to Air Force in 72 or 71 or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
71 or 72.
Right.
And Me 8 was also not actually fit for high altitude.
Aha.
And it did not have it also only same one I think radio compass was there, nothing
Mm.
more.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when the Siachen became active,
Mm.
then the need was felt for a helicopter, support helicopter,
Mm.
which can also operate at high altitude. High
Right.
altitude means above 15,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the Me 17 came to. I mean,
Mm.
they were bought by the Air Force,
Mm.
and they were bought, if I'm not mistaken, just before Sri Lankan operations around 85, 86.
Okay. Aha.
Okay. So that's the time the Me 17 came, and Me 17 at that time, Siachen was also active.
Mm-hmm.
So Me 17 played a big role in maintaining Siachen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, so they would carry loads up to say Point Kumar or the base camp, and then from there, the Chetaks or the Cheetahs would ferry it to the forward posts. Is it?
Yeah, no, we used to. The only difference was that Me 17 would drop the load.
Ah. Okay.
They will pick up the load from base camp,
Mm.
and we used to drop the load on the post in the Siachen,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and Cheetah, not
Mm.
Cheetah, Cheetah used to land.
Land. Okay. Aha. Got it.
Okay. And the other advantage of Me 17 was that if you see on the northern side, we have the post like that Hot Spring
Mm.
and then Pagong Song area. Then we
Right.
have the Daulat Beg or Oldie,
Yes.
Track Junction.
Mm.
Now, this was a flat area.
Uh-huh.
And though altitude used to be 16, 17 feet, 18,000 feet,
Mm.
and the Me 17 could land there.
Okay. Aha. Okay. Mm.
So that is where again Me 17 was a great helicopter for the high altitude.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so 152 SU was in Sarsawa, which is down in the plain. So most of your area of operation must have been close to desert and things like that.
Yeah, and this particular helicopter unit also had another role of, uh, uh, rocket firing. It had the rocket
Oh,
pods.
wow. Tell us about that. So what is that like?
So we used to carry, it had 4 pods
Mhm.
of 16 rockets each.
Wow.
So it could carry 64 rockets.
Mhm.
And we used to carry out practice that range.
Mm.
Sadwa Khas range is there na, near
Right.
Ludhiana.
Yeah.
Okay. So we used to go and fire the rockets there. So
Mhm.
that was another role given to us, that in
Right.
case of war with Pakistan,
Mhm.
we will be carrying out these support of the army,
Okay.
closer support of the army.
And these rockets were employed primarily in an anti-tank role or against soft
No,
targets? Both? Mm.
both. It was both.
Mhm. Okay.
You could fire a salvo. You could fire a twos also, fours also. You can select and fire.
Okay. Very nice. Great.
And in addition to that, we used to carry out that special heliborne operations,
Mhm. Okay.
where we used to you carry the troops behind the enemy lines
Mhm.
and you drop them by night.
That's the slithering.
Yeah, slithering.
Wow. Amazing. So you had a lot of collaboration with the army, I presume, then at that point.
Again, we
Mm.
had a lot of collaboration. We used to fly with them,
Mm.
and there was a para unit in Nahan close to us.
Correct.
So we used to carry out practices.
Okay.
We used to carry out night operations
Mhm.
with the army,
Mm.
and we had selected certain areas where we used to go and slither them down by night.
Mhm.
And then, of course, annual exercises.
Were you using any sort of night vision goggles and things like
No,
that?
no.
No,
At that time,
nothing.
we didn't
Okay.
have anything.
Okay.
Visual to before the bridge line. Just need 70, Roger, report diving southeast, connect, speed for the midway, and yield selected.
So tell us about the timber trail. This thing. What was the background? When did the call come? What did you do?
Yeah, this Timber Trail, it is a sort of tourist resort
Mm.
close to Chandigarh. From Chandigarh to Shimla Road,
Right.
around 35 kilometer. There's a
Mm.
place called Parvanu.
Mhm.
And they had made a resort there, which is on the bank of a river.
Mhm.
So what they had done was they had laid the cables from one end of the river to another end, which is a little high on top of a hill.
Mhm.
So they had laid 5 cables close to each other, maybe distance is about 1 meter to 1.5, 2 meters from each
Mm.
other.
Right.
And these trolleys, they move on those cables.
Mhm.
So these tourists, each trolley can carry about, I think, 8 or 9 passengers.
Mm.
And then this trolley moves on the cable from one end of the river to another end of the river, on top of a hill.
Okay. And they're just going for sightseeing. There's nothing on the other side.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just
Mhm.
sightseeing.
Mhm.
People go and then the next trolley they come back.
Okay. Right.
Okay, it was like this: you go there or go to the other side, top of a hill, have a cup of tea, spend some
Mm.
time there, and maybe next trolley. And it was continuous. Trolleys are coming, going like a taxi. Trolleys are
Right.
coming and
Okay.
going. You
Understood.
sit and okay,
Mhm.
that was what is happening.
Mm.
So on that particular day, on 13th of October 92,
Mm.
one of the trolley, it was carrying 8 passengers,
Mm.
and when it reached the other end
Mm.
of the river, because of the poor maintenance, the cable broke.
Oh.
Okay, it broke from the other end. It didn't break from the center, it broke from the end.
Right. Right. Mm.
And now once it break, the trolley was still in the cable, it
Mhm.
has not landed as yet.
Right. Mm.
And that end of the cable which broke, it did not fall into the river.
Mhm.
It got stuck somewhere there in the trees or boulders or something like that.
Wow.
It got stuck there. One end it broke, but it got stuck there only,
Mhm.
somewhere there. And the trolley, with its own weight, it started sliding back.
Back. Oh boy.
And now the trolley had that other end of the cable, had it fallen into the river, trolley would have also fallen
Gone
and maybe
into the
everyone
river.
would have died.
Right.
But it didn't happen that way. The
Mhm.
trolley started rolling back and it got stuck in the middle of the river where the cable was the lowest.
Oh boy. Okay. Ha ha ha.
Okay.
Understood.
So now it got stuck. Now
Hmm.
people, the construction, the trolley is such, it is locked from outside.
Hmm.
You can't open it from inside.
Oh.
That is
Okay.
because of safety reasons.
Safety reasons. Correct.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Now you imagine the trolley is stuck in the middle of the river in between the cables,
Oh boy.
and there are 8 people which are locked inside.
Oh my. And these are women, children, old people, everything.
Yeah, there were, I think, three women, 2 children, and 3 men.
Wow.
Uh, So it happened in the afternoon,
Hmm.
and they gave a call to the army. Now, when it got stuck, naturally those civil people, they did try to do, they couldn't do anything. Nobody can do anything in such a
Yeah.
situation.
Correct.
Army was called. Army also saw. They also couldn't do. Air
Mhm.
Force was contacted in the evening then.
Mhm.
And a call came to station commander, apna group captain Fali Major, who became chief later on.
Mhm.
He was a station commander.
Mhm.
And the next day morning, Chetak, being a lighter helicopter and a smaller helicopter, it was decided that okay, Chetak will go and evacuate those people.
Mhm. And this Chetak was fitted with a winch. This had a winch.
Yeah,
Ah,
a winch.
okay. Ah,
All the helicopters, they have winch.
okay.
Okay. Me-8 also, Me-17, because this is one of the role of helicopter.
Mhm.
So Chetak, they went, and frankly speaking, I didn't pay much heed to it because I thought, okay, they'll go and they'll evacuate and it'll be over.
Right.
And we got busy with our own work.
Mm.
And around 12 o'clock, I got a call from station commander Fali Major. He also had gone
Mhm.
in that helicopter to Chandi Mandar, because it was being done from Chandi Mandar, ex-Chandi Mandar.
Right.
It is
Right.
closer to Chandi Mandar.
Yeah. Mhm.
So he rang up and told me that I should come with a winch and Me-17.
Mm.
So whosoever was available, I told flight commander get one helicopter ready. So anyway, my other co-pilot was Flight Lieutenant Upadhyaya,
Mhm.
Piyush Upadhyaya,
Okay.
and there was a JW Yadav. He was the gunner,
Aha.
and there was a Sahu was the engineer,
Ah.
and there was another pilot and the sergeant.
Mm.
Okay, he also came along. So when now we landed there, and everyone was there.
Mhm.
Chetak pilots were there, army people were there, TAC commander was there, station commander apna Gurpi Fali Major was there,
Mm.
and they told us that it is a little difficult and Chetak have tried, but somehow it is not working out.
Mhm.
And Chetak pilot told me the difficulty that the trolley is in between the cables.
Oh.
Okay, it is not it is to one side, or it is not isolated, it is in between the cables.
Mm.
And there are 2 cables to the left, one is on top on the trolley, and one is to the right.
Mhm.
And the trolley is on the lowermost cable.
Mm.
So to go over the trolley is the most it's difficult thing.
Mhm.
Okay. So I said, okay, let us see. So I also went, and for about 45 minutes we hovered over it,
Mhm.
trying to get into it and trying to see what can be done, how we can rescue these people.
Right.
But we could not go really close to the cable, or close to the trolley, or we couldn't go over the trolley. We couldn't go.
Right.
Okay, we tried everything.
Mm.
Then when I decided, okay, let's go back. And
Mm.
as I was turning back,
Mm.
somehow the thought came to my mind, let me go to the beginning of the cable and see if I can get in between the cables.
Mm-hmm.
Where the cables are starting.
Right, right. Uh-huh.
That is at the resort.
Mm.
Okay. So then there we went, and very, very slowly
Mm.
I managed to get in between the cables.
Oh boy.
Okay, in between the cable. And when we got in between, we moved a little bit, and then I saw that on the left there are two cables which are close to the rotor, about a meter, meter and a half.
My God.
And on top, of course, I looked up, there was a cable on top of me.
Bloody hell.
Okay. And
Wow.
on the right, there was a cable, but it was not at the level of the rotor. It was a little below the rotor.
Boy.
Okay.
Hmm.
So I realized that if there is an escape, now we have gotten, the only escape for us is to gradually come out to the right.
Oh.
Okay. On the left, it is totally blocked.
Mm.
Top, we cannot go.
Wow.
So what we did was, very slowly we kept on following that particular cable,
Mm.
which had this thing, and very, very slowly we managed to reach over the cable.
Mm-hmm.
And we must have hovered over that trolley for about 30 seconds or so.
Mm.
And this trolley was at a height of about 1,300 feet above above the riverbed.
Aha. Okay. Mm.
So at that height, to hover without any reference
Mm.
was extremely difficult.
Yeah, so if you can just explain for the audience what is out of ground effect, OG hovering.
You see, when you are close to the ground, then you have the reference of the ground, means you can see the feature on the ground, you can look at the feature, and in relation to that, you can appreciate the movement of the helicopter, whether it is moving left, right, or forward or backward.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Plus your airflow of the rotor, it is coming and hitting the ground,
Mm.
and the reaction of that airflow is giving you an upward thrust.
Right, right,
So that is called hovering in ground effect.
right.
And it is easier to hover when you are closer to the ground,
Mm.
because you have the ground effect, and
Mm.
also you can see something on ground to appreciate whether you are moving left, right, or forward.
Perfect, perfect. Mm.
When you are hovering high,
Mm.
then you do not have the advantage of the ground effect. And
Mm.
also there is no reference for you to know whether you are moving forward or left or right. There is no
Right.
reference.
Yeah.
You may think that you are stationary,
Stationary.
but actually you may not be stationary.
Oh boy. Uh-huh.
So that was the difficulty we had, hovering 1,300 feet above the seabed.
My
Sorry,
goodness.
riverbed.
Riverbed. Uh-huh.
Of course, I must give full credit to the other my co-pilot, Flight Lieutenant Upadhyaya. He was good, and he did manage to hover there for about 30 seconds initially. Okay, because both the pilots have to be equally alert. And I, being responsible for everything, I have to be 200% alert.
Right,
Okay.
right. Wow.
And then I realized that when we are hovering over it, that trolley below us is dangling left, right because of the downwash.
Because of the downwash. Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay, because all the downwash is coming on the trolley.
Right.
Now it is moving left and right. So gradually we came out. Okay, to the right. Very gradually we came out, and at that time I was double-minded whether to attempt or not to attempt. I was double-minded.
Okay. On the helicopter, did you have the army folks with you, or somebody who would go down? You did have them. Okay.
We had that Major Krasto was
Major
on board,
Krasto was there.
as well as his CEO, Colonel Bhardwaj.
Okay.
He was also on board
Okay.
at that time, and they saw everything. They saw how close were the cables. They saw how the trolley was dangling. They saw everything, and how dangerous it was.
Wow.
They saw everything. And but ultimately responsibility was mine. So anyway, I came back and we landed at Chandi Mandir.
Mm.
Basically, I landed to tell them, "Ke bhaiya, it is difficult. It is very risky. Not difficult. It's very risky
Mm.
because the rotors were so close to the cables
Mm.
that there was absolutely no margin of safety.
Right, right.
Slight mistake on the part of the pilot,
Mm.
the rotor will touch the cable,
Mm.
the rotor will break, and everyone in the helicopter will go down, and the
Mm.
trolley people also may, be
Right.
with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we landed, the Group P Fali Major was there,
Mm.
and one I remember our Army Major General was there, and I told them it is extremely risky,
Mm.
and I can't say whether we should attempt or not. Basically, I wanted somebody to say, "Okay,
Mm.
let's not take that kind of risk."
Right.
But to my surprise, what had happened was, when all this we were doing over the site, they were army people.
Mm.
They were transmitting everything to Chandi Mandir and praising the pilot.
Oh.
And they were praising, "Oh my God, they have done it. It is very, pilot is very good. Now he's hovering over Okay.
Oh boy.
No, we had no idea about that. We had no idea what they were talking.
Right.
And then I must say, Colonel Bhardwaj also told that army commander, and he told Major also, okay,
Mm.
I think he can do it.
Mm. Okay.
So I consulted my co-pilot. I asked Push how. He says we should try.
Mhm.
We should try. And then now we sort of got prepared. Okay, let us try
Right.
lowering Crasto first.
Uh-huh. Okay.
If we succeed in that.
Boy.
So again we took off.
Mm.
Now again we followed the same procedure, and
Mm.
I decided to myself, okay, each one has to do the job, okay, because everyone has to be alert.
Mm.
And I used to fly the helicopter from the beginning of the resort, following the cable, come over the trolley,
Mm.
and then I used to hand over the control to my co-pilot with just one aim, okay, you just try to hover.
Ah.
And okay, and I will look to the left for the cables, the rotor and the cable. Should there be a gap, or should the rotor goes close to the cable, I can correct it. And also we have to give instructions to the gunner to lower the winch.
Right.
Now, as he was lowering, the winch was also dangling, the trolley was also dangling with the downwash.
My God.
And it was quite a job to take the winch onto the trolley. Okay, imagine that your target is moving and you are trying to fire at it.
Right, right. Wow.
Target is also moving and the gun is also moving.
Wow.
Okay, so it was like that.
Mm.
So finally, after about 2-3 minutes of hover, he managed to put Crasto onto the trolley.
Wow.
And we lowered him, and now it was very tiring. So we came out. Okay, we took 5-10 minutes of normal flying rest. Okay.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, and gave time to Crasto to open the trolley. So he opened the trolley, and after some time we saw that he's trying to come out of the trolley. Okay, we could see the trolley from the air. And then again we got ourselves in between the cables. Again
Did
we
Crasto
flew.
have a handheld radio or something like that? Could you speak to him or no?
No, we couldn't speak to him. There was no, see, that kind of communication was not there. We could not speak to him. I don't think he had, I'm not very sure, but we couldn't speak to him. We could only do the sign language with him.
Wow.
So then we again went and positioned the helicopter on top of the cables, on top of the trolley. Upadhyaya, he took over, he started hovering. I started giving instructions to the gunner, and we have to make slight corrections on the helicopter, depending upon where is the winch going, because winch has to be taken on top of the trolley.
Right.
So then the winch reached Crasto. He tied one person. I think the first person was a child or something. The first per- to come out was a man with a child. He came the first one.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And we managed to pull him into the helicopter. Again, we came out of the from the cables. Again, we took about 5-7 minutes of rest. Okay,
Wow.
and this way, that day, by the time we made about 4 trips, the sun had set. So we decided to call it off that day.
So in 4 trips, how many people did you manage to get out?
I think we got 5 people out.
5 people out of the 8.
Five passengers.
Uh-huh.
Passengers.
Okay.
Crasto was there.
Still on the top of the winch. My God.
Yeah, Nick Crasto was there in the trolley.
On the trolley. In the trolley.
In the trolley, and there were 4 more left inside.
Okay. Wow.
So
What was your feeling
anyway,
when the first person was winched up? So what was your emotion?
no, frankly speaking, I don't really remember because there were so many things happening at that time. Na? Now, I will tell you about the emotions later, but at that time we were in it and there were so many things happening, so emotions had no time.
I agree.
Okay.
I understand
And I was
completely.
only worried about, the safety of my crew. And, frankly speaking, if everything goes well, people clap, everyone says, oh, good job. But should the things go wrong, then the same people will say, oh, where was the need of taking that kind of risk?
Risk, correct. Very true.
So now we came and we spent the night. Now, when the night fell, that is the time emotion started coming now.
Wow.
Now we were, even with my co-pilot also, we were closing our eyes, but we were only seeing those cables close to the rotor. Okay.
Oh boy.
Okay. And whole night, you won't believe it, I could not sleep
Wow.
because there were so many things happening in my mind at that time. Okay. If this happens, what will happen? If this happens, what will happen? So in the morning, again, I discussed few things with the other pilots, and again we got into it. Okay, because now we are in it, we have to finish the job.
Correct. Yeah.
We made one trip. The winds, now the valley, winds were also strong. The problem in this operation was that there was no scope for making any error. Plus, in the valley, the winds were changing. So when we picked up the first person in the morning, we realized the helicopter is becoming unstable because of the crosswind. So we gave a break of another 1 hour or so, let the winds die down slightly, and then we picked up the remaining people. And real emotions came out only when we picked up the last person. Okay, frankly speaking, the only emotion we all felt was relief.
Wow.
Okay, thank God we have completed it.
My goodness.
Because the things were so close. I mean, the helicopter was so close that slight mistake on the part of the pilot, and everyone would have gone down.
Amazing. Wow.
So this was about Timber Trail.
Tremendous.
You see, in the end, this Timber Trail operation, I would like to place on record that this operation was possible only because of the cooperation and help of all the crew members.
Right.
Group Captain Fali Major, he reposed faith in me or trust in me, and he allowed me to do such a risky operation.
Right.
And my crew members, Flight Lieutenant Upadhyaya, J.W. Yadav, and Sergeant Sahu and Dalai Gangadharan, they all performed extremely well during the operation, and that is how this operation was possible.
Right. Yeah, it's it's all that training, I guess, and then
Yes.
to perform on the day that you're called to really is a sign of the high professionalism of the Air Force. So.
Yes, yes, yes.
Visual maneuver outside, before and visualize. Just need 70, like your report diving southeast, connection speed 54, midway, and yield still active.
So after that, I know you were posted in Southern Air Command, and then Pawan Hans had asked for some helicopter pilots, and then you moved there. What were your
Yeah,
experiences like doing that? Mm.
in end of 96 or 97, around 97, uh, Pavan has asked for some helicopter pilot from the Indian Air Force.
Mhm.
So I was also asked if you would like to go.
Mm.
And I said, okay, I'll go.
Mhm.
And then I came to Pavan Hans,
Mm.
which is again a government of India company.
Right.
And I was in Bombay.
Mhm.
Now, Pavan Hans, though in Bombay we fly for ONGC offshore,
Mm.
but Pavan Hans also is deployed all over the country. For
Mm.
example, we are in Lakshadweep
Mm.
in support of the civil administration. We are
Mm.
in Car Nicobar.
Mhm.
We are in Guwahati,
Wow.
and we are in this place, Andhra Pradesh, Rajamundry.
Mhm.
We also flew in Chennai.
Mm. Okay.
So from Pavanas, I was in Bombay, but I used to go all over.
Mhm.
And in Pavanas, because of my Air Force background, and in the Air Force, I was an examiner.
Mm.
So Pavanas also made me an examiner on
Mm.
Dolphin helicopter.
Okay. I was going to ask you which helicopter you were flying. And did you go to France for training for that?
No, I didn't go to France for training.
Mm.
That was another sort of issue not issue it another the EU, that is the European Union,
Mhm.
there was some exchange program
Okay.
where the European Union, they wanted some civil pilots to come there
Mhm.
for flying
Mm.
in the simulator, as well as they were testing some the night vision goggles.
Okay. Mm.
Okay. So what had happened was, one test pilot from Dolphin company, it came to Bombay to fly and see what are we doing in offshore.
Mhm.
So I flew one sortie with them, and then we started talking.
Mm.
And he found interesting, things about flying, and talking
Mm.
to me, he found it very interesting.
Mm.
And he said, I want to stay here one more day and fly more with this pilot.
Wow.
So next day I was given the task of flying with him. So
Mm.
that whole day we flew together over Bombay High.
Mm.
And then he went to Delhi, and he told our CMD
Mm.
that you send this pilot to uh, France in
Mhm.
exchange program.
Right.
Okay. So that is how I landed up in France.
Mm. What happened there?
There we were to do some simulated flying,
Mhm.
and they were making some procedures. So it was nice discussing with them the
Mm.
dolphin flying procedures.
Mm.
And also we did some night flying
Mm.
in the Alps, in the hills.
Wow.
Okay. So that was another very interesting part. And we were testing these night vision goggles.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And they wanted to make some modifications there.
Mm.
So it was nice.
Mhm.
It was a mutual learning.
Right.
And you see, Indian pilots have got a very diverse experience.
Mm.
We fly in high altitude, we fly over the sea, we fly in the desert,
Mm.
we fly in cold climate, we fly in hot climate, we fly
Mm.
in all kinds of terrain
Right.
as well as the weather.
Right.
And those pilots in France, I realized they did not have that kind of
Mm.
experience.
Mhm.
So it was nice discussing with them,
Mm.
okay, about various issues about flying.
Right. Now, you were flying offshore with Pawan Hans. That must have
Ji.
involved a lot of night flying over the sea. Must have been, that sounds very scary, that stuff. What was that like, sir?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
what was the
yeah.
Dolphin like as a helicopter compared to, say, the Russian helicopters you had flown before?
Dolphin helicopter is a much better helicopter, much better helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be surprised that the Dolphin has got one of the best navigate or avionics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it has got weather radar, GPS. It has got VOR. It has got ILS,
Mm-hmm.
and the ILS is so good. Our ILS was the same which is there in the Airbus.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. And I would say that avionics wise is one of the best helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
Flying over the sea, particularly at night, was challenging. You see, what happens is that when you are flying over the sea at night, particularly dark night, and then there is nothing over the sea, you can see. And sometimes it is cloudy, and when you look up it is dark, when you in front it is dark, left, right, down, below, everywhere is total darkness,
Right.
and you feel as if you are in a bowl of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And chances of getting disorientation are very bright.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that was
And
a
did the
big
Dolphin
change.
have a autopilot, or was it all
Yeah.
manual? You did.
No,
Okay.
autopilot is there, and that is how this helicopter we could manage to fly by night.
Right.
You have to get used to that kind of environment, because in the Air Force we really don't fly with that in that kind of environment. When there's a total darkness, we don't
Right.
fly.
Uh-huh.
And particularly in helicopters where the avionics are not there, autopilot is not there, you are not even allowed to enter clouds.
Right. Correct. Uh-huh. And so this was IFR capable.
Yes, fully IFR. Okay.
And how do you find these rigs? Do they have a beacon of some sort that you can then tune?
Yes, not all,
Mm.
but major rigs have the beacon.
Mm-hmm.
And subsequently, once you have the GPS, then it is easier. Navigation is easier with the GPS.
Okay.
And the latest helicopter which Pawan Hans has is called N3 helicopter, Dolphin version, but improved version of Dolphin. You can couple the your autopilot with the GPS. That means you set the destination on the GPS and you couple it with the autopilot. Then the helicopter will automatically take you to the destination.
Wow. Okay. Uh-huh. Any memorable rescue operations given your background while you were at Pawan Hans?
Pawan Hans, there were many small incidents, and night evacuation, of course, we used to do quite often. And I generally used to be, being an examiner, my other pilot used to be generally under training pilot. Okay.
Wow.
And I remember one incident in Bombay High, during the monsoon. There was a storm, very heavy, like monsoon winds are very strong, of course.
Right.
There was a rain and there was some bad weather. And there was a cargo ship which was crossing, going out of Bombay. And when it reached somewhere near in Bombay High area, it started listing.
Oh boy. Uh-huh.
It was those containers were there, cargo containers were there. And it started listing, and as it was going, the listing kept on increasing.
Oh boy.
And they decided to first the crew members, they were asked to leave the cargo ship. So they were picked up by the helicopter. And by the evening, when they realized that now they cannot really save the helicopter, then even the captain also was picked up from the ship.
Right. Uh-huh.
And now this ship was left alone in Bombay High.
Wow.
And it was at the mercy of winds.
Oh boy. Uh-huh.
Okay, and full of these containers. And this ship started drifting towards a rig.
Hola.
Okay, at night it started drifting, and they were keeping a track of it.
Mm.
And on that rig, there were about 90 or 100 people, at night.
Oh my.
Acha, now there was a fear that if this cargo ship, if it hits the rig,
Mm.
it may break the rig and a rig may go down.
Bloody hell, yes.
So around 2 o'clock night, we were woken up and we were told, okay, this is the problem. These people have to be evacuated.
Oh,
And it was drizzling.
Mm.
And also, of course, winds were strong. That is a normal
Right,
thing
right.
there,
Mm.
So I remember that operation,
Mm.
that, and I remember my other pilot was rather new,
Mhm.
he didn't have much experience, so he was not much help to me at
Wow.
that time. Okay,
Mm.
so we made about how many now? About 15 or so trips
My
quickly.
goodness.
Okay,
Wow.
to
How long?
evacuate
How
because
long was each trip? How far away was the rig?
each trip was about 10 minutes, I remember.
Okay.
So we were just picking up those people from that particular rig which
Mm.
was under danger
Mm.
and bringing them to another rig which is safer.
Okay. Wow.
So that distance was not much, but you have to go around and make a circuit
Mm.
and things like that,
Right.
and then landing on both the places, dropping the
Mm.
people.
At
Okay,
night.
at night.
Mm.
And all kinds of dark night. Of course, it was dark night and
Mm.
raining and drizzling.
Mm.
Okay,
Wow.
and strong winds. So that
Amazing.
is one rescue I remember
Oh
at
boy.
Bombay High.
Amazing, amazing. So, sir, for all of these, I mean, I know for the Timber Trail rescue, you were awarded a Shaurya Chakra when you were in service, but for the civilian side, is there anything that anybody gives you by way of recognition?
Himachal government gave me Himachal Gaurav Puruskar.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And in the end, when I was leaving Pavanans, we used to fly, and we were in touch with the Maharashtra government also,
Mhm.
gave me a letter of appreciation.
Wow.
So that was nice. There was a function in Pavan Hans, and the chief secretary came, and on behalf of the government, he gave me that letter of
Very nice.
appreciation.
Very nice. Very nice. And so, sir, when you finally hung up your flying overalls, you had how many hours of flying?
Air Force, about 7,000, and
Mm.
around 14,000 hours I flew. About 14, more than 14, must be about 15,000 hours
Wow.
I flew in Pavan Hans. So
Wow.
about 22,000 plus.
22,000 plus. My goodness. Well, thank you so much for your service and thank you for the time you've taken today. It's just been a wonderful conversation. And, it really brought the Timber Trail rescue, but also your very interesting career to life. I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ganapati. It was nice talking to you. And of course, remembering old days in Air Force and Pavan Hans.
Visual to before noon of visual landing. Just need 70, like your report time southeast, connect for midway, and you'll still active.
Well, folks, that's all we have time for this week. Join us again next week. In the meantime, sign up for updates at blueskiespodcast.com. There you'll find links to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also write to us with your comments, questions, suggestions, and feedback from the website or to blueskies@prganapati.com. Subscribe to the podcast on any podcasting platform such as Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even on YouTube. If you like what you heard, share it with your friends, give us a rating in your favorite podcasting app, and write us a review. It will help other people find us. I want to give my thanks to Saurav Chordia for our logo and Prithvik for the music. I want to reiterate that all the views expressed here are personal, and this podcast has not been approved by or reviewed by the Air Force, Ministry of Defense, or any branch of the government. In the meantime, stay safe and Jai Hind.